What up guys, and welcome back to the channel. So this video is going to be the start of a new series where I go over how to build for each role, and today we'll be starting with the hunter role. So first we'll go over auto attack based hunters, and we'll use Rama as our first example, and I'll be sure to touch on ability based hunters right after, so stick around for that. So let's get right into it. So you pretty much always want to start off with leather cowl. It's pretty much the best option pretty much 99% of the time. It just gives, you know, decent power. It gives pretty much anything you want as an ADC early game. You know, MP5, really important. Power, lifesteal, attack speed, 15% attack speed, really strong in lane. Then you want to go with short bow tier 1 equipable, because we'll be building into some bows. And then you want to go, of course, your healing potions, multi-pots, or mana pots, depending on your preference. And you generally want to start beads 90% of the time. Sometimes you want to start Aegis, but only if they have very low CC. So our first item I'm going to is equipable. Probably the hunter's strongest item at the moment. It gives such a huge power spike once you first buy that. Once you get out of base, get to learn this item, you'll be swinging very hard. Has 75, 80 power, 30% attack speed, and it decreases your opponent's attack speed. So it's pretty much almost impossible to box into an equal if you don't have one yourself. And you're just one tip: if you're a hunter player, an AC player, and you're laning versus another hunter who has equal and you don't, and you're maybe you have tier 2 equal, you have yet to back, you pretty much never want to take that fight, because equal will win pretty much 99% of the time. So that's pretty much a staple in every auto attack based build, and pretty much almost every build currently has a equal in it. And next we're going over probably the next best item in the entire hunter role, and probably one of the best items in the entire game, is Odysseus bow. So if you don't know what Odysseus bow is, it's a very cheap item, 2100 gold, gives you 40% attack speed, and that's it. But the passive is where it truly shines. So every fourth auto, your auto attacks shoot out a chain lightning, and it bounces around to 4 enemies, deals 15 damage plus 6% of your total base attack power. Now, to maybe new players or people who don't play ADC too much, this may not seem like too good, and even to me, like, I don't normally buy it too much, but its usefulness and its value is pretty hard to quantify. It just gives you so much value, being able to clear away with just your auto attacks, especially in team fights, and especially higher level as well. It's very important in high level games, especially because there's a lot of Fire Giant Gold Fury dances, you know, where teams are grouped, and you can bounce it off the Gold Fury, you can bounce it off the tanks. It's just an all-around very good item, and has very high value because it is so cheap, and it just provides you so much. Okay, so pretty much these 3 items are pretty much a staple on almost every build, and you have the option of branching out into 2 builds. So one is probably the most standard and probably the highest DPS for the most part, is a crit build. And if you are going into crit, generally you want to go into Rage right after Oboe. Rage is very good because it gives you the highest crit chance in the game. If you get it fully stacked, you get 45%, and it's just all around very solid if you're going crit build. And after that, you want to go dominance, and dominance, you pick up dominance in crit builds because you need a big source of pen and pretty much any build, and dominance getting buffed recently, and even before it's buffed, it was still pretty strong. It gives a lot of power to help your crits do more damage, and it gives you 15% physical penetration towards your auto attacks. So this includes crit. So it really does make you crit really hard, because you basically have, you know, effectively 25% physical penetration on your crits. So it is very strong. And we'll go over some alternatives as well for other items in the build. And next you want to go Wind Demon as your second and final crit option. Wind Demon is very strong. It used to be stronger, but it's been nerfed, you know, past a year or so. Gives power, attack speed, crit chance, and most importantly, the passive is insanely. It's one of the best passives in the game. Whenever you critical hit, you gain 10% physical penetration, and you increase your attack speed by 15% and your movement speed by 10% for 5 seconds. So this actually ends up being a lot of DPS in a team fight over the course of the game. It increases your DPS loads Just by giving you the physical percent physical penetration is insanely strong, and not to mention increases your move speed by 10%. And you know, if we look at other move speed items in the entire game, 7%, 7%, that's just 30, but only an ability, 7%, 7%. You know, like a lot of these move speed items really don't have that much move speed, and Wind Demon gives you 10%, so it is very, very strong. If you think about it, it gives you, you know, 35% attack speed, 10% moon speed, 10% pen, 20% crit chance, and 25 power. So it's a very stacked item. It's very crucial in a crit build. And then you want to finish it off with a Hunter's Cowl. You know, pretty much the best starter item for Hunters in the game. This is pretty essential in all these builds. You pretty much need Hunter's Cowl because it gives you lifesteal and a very big source of power. Because previously, you know, season 7, you know, pretty much since the dawn of time, ADCs would go Death Gloves, and that was your main source of lifesteal and your main source of power. It gives you like 60 power, 65 power, something like that, and it gives you like 29% lifesteal. This gives you 60 power and 15% lifesteal, which obviously is, you know, quite a lot less, but it's still 15% is still very effective. It still does the job. You still feel the lifesteal in team fights and in the game. And the passive is insanely strong, helps your entire team. If you didn't know, it's an aura, giving your allies 25% attack speed around you. If you're alone, you gain 10% move speed, so it's very strong. Here are 2 substitute items late game. So if you want to sell Ichabod, one good option is selling Ichabod for Aussie, and because you get extra life steal and you don't lose how much damage. You lose quite a lot of power, but Aussie helps you late game with, you know, turning and burning. If a tank's diving you, you have the extra life steal and the passive life steal when you get low to help you box. Having life steal crit definitely helps you life steal more. So this kind of synergizes well with the rest of the build, and it still gives you some pen so you can do a little bit more damage. But you do lose power from Ichabod and boxing potential. Well, I shouldn't say boxing potential because Aussie does help you box really well, but yeah. Another item you can sell Ichabod for is chin size. If the tanks are stacking a lot of HP, you can get a chin size in there. You know, it is you know, usually frowned upon to go chin size with crit, because normally in a build like this you wouldn't have, you know, max attack speed. So having chin size is less effective. But if you actually look at the items, and this is without the Hunter's Cowl passive, right? So we're 17.5%, but if you build all this level chin size, you actually still have a decent attack speed. And this is without the Wind Demon passive and without the Hunter's Cowl passive. So you'll pretty much be capped without using your steroid as a hunter with chin size. So it is still effective and with crit. So chin size is definitely still a decent item to go here. And if they are hardcore stacking defense and you do no damage, but they don't have a lot of HP and you don't want chin size, perhaps something like Titan's Bane could help you a lot. Gives you a lot of physical penetration, and the passive actually does overcap. So if you are capped and you use the passive on Titan's Bane, the 20%, it will do extra damage. So that is something to keep in mind. Also, Ichabod will help, Silver Branch might help, stuff like that. And of course, if tanks are too oppressive when you go this build, you could sell your Rage, you could sell your Wind Demon, and you could go into more of an attack speed build. And which leads us into our next build, which is attack speed. So it's pretty much the same principle. You want to start, you know, Cowl. We'll just do Hunter's Cowl just because. And then you want to go Ichabod, Oboe. You know, like I said, these are very core staple items in pretty much all these builds. And then here it gets a little bit flexible, and it depends on the game state. But generally, you can go into Silver Branch here, and you'll pretty much almost be overcapped. You might have to lower level down. You'll be almost overcapped. You know, somewhere around here, you almost be overcapped. When you press your steroid, if you do have a steroid, you'll be overcapped. So you do get value out of that Silver Branch, but it still is a very solid item. It's very, very cheap, 2200. Both these items are both very cheap, so you'll get them online relatively fast, and this gives, you know, pen, decent power, good attack speed. It will help you into mid to end of late game, or end of mid game. And then you always want to have a chin size in pretty much every single attack speed build you go. And here is where you can get a bit flexible. You can go chin size before Silver Branch. It's not bad at all, but you know, if you do have a steroid and you use your steroid, you will be overcapped on attack speed, and you will be missing out on a little bit of you know, extra attack speed from your steroid. So that is something to keep in mind. It's not a very big deal, but if they are building a lot of HP early, you can go an early chin size, and it will be fine. But for this case, the most standard, we'll do Silver Branch into chin size. And then here, for your last item, this is where things can get very flexible. And we'll talk about Rage in a second. But here, I want you to focus on these three. These are 3 items that you can go last. I'd say the best item to go last, for the most part, in my opinion, is Titan's Bane. Simply because it gives you 20% pen for your power, you know, pretty solid stats. The passive solid. But for dominance, you know, you might be thinking, well, why dominance in the other build but Titan's Bane in this build? Dominance actually, the dominance passive doesn't work towards yellow damage, and that is Odysseus bow and chin size. Dominance actually won't be buffing the damage of those items. It'll only be buffing your auto tech damage. So you do get the 10% towards the chin size and towards the oboe, but you do not get the 15%. Whereas Titan's Bane, you get a full 20% with your oboe and with your chin size. So I haven't done the maths, but you know, from just looking at it, and you guys can probably assume as well, I think Titan's Bane would be more damage than dominance in this case. So it's something to keep in mind. Your next option is going on last item Wind Demon. Going on last item crit is pretty good because one Wind Demon is very, very stacked, and it gives you attack speed, which, you know, synergizes well with the build and Silver Branch, and it gives you pen, so you're not missing out on too much pen because this build only has 10% so far. You know, that is something you want to keep in mind. Wind Demon is pretty useful also because their tanks are not going to be building any spectral, because if they see, you know, cowl, Ikavolt, oboe, Silver Branch, you know, they might think, okay, you know, maybe my last item I'll go the anti-crit thing, I can't think of it, spectral, yeah, sorry, I had it a second ago. So they, you know, if they might think like, I'll go spectral last, right? Maybe if he goes crit, but they see you go chin size, they see this build, they're like, okay, he's not gonna go crit. They'll just finish out their build, and you can actually sneak in a Wind Demon, and it'll either disrupt their build, or they won't be able to build spectral quick enough. They won't have enough gold, or they might have to sell items, you know, whatever it may be. So that is a pretty good last alternative to, you know, Titan's Bane. And last, you can go Executioner. It's not bad at all. The only reason why I put Titan's Bane over Executioner, in my opinion, is because Exy is very useful because it gives you attack speed for your Silver Branch, but I believe the 20% flat outright from Titan's Bane and the 10% plus from Silver Branch, that'd be 30%. That'd be more effective because, like, having 30% pen, like, you know, just non-reduction, just, you know, flat 30%, means that your first auto or anything you do will have 30% pen. Whereas with Executioner, in order to get that actual, like, you know, the most value from Exy, you would have to auto 4 times, which would take, you know, quite a while. But it does help your allies, it does help your other physical teammates on your team. So if you have like a nemesis or someone who's hitting frontline with you, it could be pretty wise to go Executioner to help them shred protections. But it definitely does take it does take a while, and you don't even get the same amount of pen from. You get less pen from this than you would from Titan's Bane, Silver Branch. You get 28% from XC, I think. Right. Yeah, you get 28% from XC. You get 30% from Silver Branch and Titan's Bane together, plus the passive on abilities. It's not every 10 seconds, but still something to keep in mind. So that is why I pretty much prefer Titan's Bane over XC, and also because this percent pen here on Silver Branch doesn't really work with XC, because this is percent reduction and this is percent. So if you're reducing a large portion of their protections, this is going to be, your 10% on this is going to be a little bit less effective. Although it still is effective and it still is 10% pen, it'll be less effective than it would before. But it's a very solid item. Execution is it does synergize with Silver Branch passive, not the percent pen, but synergize with the passive, and it is a solid pickup. But I would recommend Titan's Bane. And for Rage, so one thing you can do actually is you can actually go Silver Branch here, and then you can go Rage, and then from here you can go Chin Size, or you can go, you know, Titan's Bane, or you can go Wind Demon, or you can go maybe XE, but I'd probably still say Chin Size. This is pretty good because Rage actually as a standalone crit item is pretty solid. Same with Wind Demon, but this gives you a lot more crit chance. So if you're versus junglers that are diving you really hard, or you think they're gonna dive you, going Rage might be effective. Or if you're just killing everyone, getting a Rage out of base might be pretty solid. It would decrease your TPS by a lot. And of course in this build you don't have much pen, so you gotta watch out for that. But it all depends on the game state. You know, this is kind of a not an every game thing, but it is something you can do. Yeah, that is pretty much the auto tech based hunter build. Pretty standard, pretty much what you want to build every game. This is pretty much what you want to build for the most part. It is a very solid build, and again, this is the crit version. If you don't want to go crit, totally fine. Different strokes for different folks. You can go into Silver Branch, Chin Size, Titan's Bane. This is also the second build here. And yeah, that's pretty much it for auto tech based hunters. And this actually can apply to every single hunter in the hunter tab. Whether it's Ullr, Scotty, Neith, you know, Medusa, Chiron, that build will work for all of them. Both those builds work for all of them because those items are all really good. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe your favorite hunter is an ability-based hunter. That build is still probably the best on them, but we will still go over auto tech based builds here. I just want to clarify that again, you might be putting yourself at a disadvantage if you go something like this for Ullr. So here I've drafted up a quick little ability based build, and I love Ullr, but it is unfortunate that I think as of right now on this patch, I don't know what patch it is, but it is before the jungle buff. All the jungle jungle items getting buffed. Before that patch, this build probably is not as effective as something like, you know, basic like this, but we'll still go over it because, you know, some people do really enjoy having, you know, a build that feels good to them. You know, maybe this is less effective overall, you know, stat wise, numbers wise, but it feels better to you, and that's totally okay. So you want to start out with, you know, leather cowl, get your pots. You want to start out with trans 1 most likely. And I will go over a few alternatives as well, but I think leather cowl is probably the best in general, because it gives you all the attack speed you want, all the power you want, MP5, and also gives you lifesteal that you will be missing from this build. So you go also, and next I like to go Drone's Wrath on Ullr or most ability based hunters because, you know, having cooldown is very good. And then here it's either Brawlers or Crusher. Both are very solid. Overall though, I believe Crusher is better because of the attack speed for hunters. But if they have healing, you definitely want to go into Brawlers. But for the most part, Crusher is very solid. And then after that, always want to go Titan's Bane on ability based hunter builds. You want to go after these two flat pen items because you want to just get your big percent pin online. That's 40% on your first ability. So if you're someone like Ullr and you're throwing these hail of arrows with bladed arrows out and you're poking in team fights, that's gonna be a 40% pin swing right there. So it's gonna do a lot of damage. And then last item, I like to always get Heartseeker pretty much. You can go other things. You can maybe go Beat Stick. You can maybe go Mantle. I wouldn't recommend Bloodforge. You can maybe go Oboe or Aussie. Those wouldn't be too bad, but I like to go Heartseeker if I'm going ability based. And next we'll go over some solid like late game starter item alternatives. So a few things that might be pretty good is Bumba Spear. It gives you 70 power, 10% cooldown, 10% percent pen, and the passive helps you do more damage to objectives, which you'll be missing from, you know, not having crit, you know, not being attack speed. So you do get kind of that bonus damage there, which isn't too much for autos, but it's all for abilities. But you actually get a 10% power buff whenever you kill a jungle camp for 30 seconds, which can be actually very, very strong. You know, 340 power, you'd get a lot of power from that, including your 2 plus a red pot plus maybe a red buff. You'd have so much power, your 1-shot. But it is very experimental. I wouldn't recommend doing this unless you're a more experienced player, because it is not kind of proven how good Bumble Spear is, although I think it can be good. Next is Mannequin Hidden Blade. You just go Mannequin last item and then upgrade it. And for all these builds, I would recommend starting Trans tier 2. It would just be probably the most solid all around, and then pots. But yeah, one that came out we can get is Mannequin Hidden Blade instead of Cowl. It's pretty solid on Ullr because you can, again, poke through hail of arrows, and this would be about 200 damage every 5 seconds, or every proc of it when you're out of combat. It's very solid, especially with Heartseeker. It'll help you a lot. And if you want to make good use out of it, maybe Knuckle Crusher, because Crusher lasts for 2 seconds on them, so it's 2 seconds longer it would take for a mannequin to come out of combat. But it's not the biggest deal in the world. And then last but not least, it's Bumba's Hammer. I personally probably wouldn't go Bumba's Hammer most of the time. It's been nerfed quite a bit. It doesn't have the percent pin on it. And overall, I think you'd just be losing a lot of damage. But it is very fun, and it can be good on Ullr. But Ullr is probably the only one I'd go it on. But even with all these, with Ullr and Scotty and Medusa, all the other kind of ability-centered hunters, I would still recommend going the usual build of Cowl, Ichabod, Oboe, and then you can either go like the crit variation here, which is very solid on any hunter, or you can just go the Silver Branch into Chin Size and Titan's Bane. This is still very, very good on Ullr and pretty much any hunter, and it'll pretty much guarantee you have a decent game. So I'd recommend doing these items, and not this here. I would not recommend going this too much, but I'd recommend going any of these items. And Scotty, again, Scotty's an interesting hunter because she can flex into ability based, and she can flex into attack speed based. So it's kind of up to you, but I'd still, of course, recommend going to the usual, kind of boring, but the usual build of something like this, or something like this, whatever it is, or the usual crit build, like I've been saying. I would definitely recommend this on Scotty. It just depends what you like more. Both these builds are solid. It depends on do you like crit? Do you want attack speed? Depends on what you want. And crit always has more objective damage, so you want to keep that in mind. And it pretty much depends on the state of the game. At this point, you can determine you can look at the enemy's team comp and wonder, well, they have 3 hardcore tanks. They have maybe a Guardian in Solon, Guardian in support, maybe an Osiris in the jungle or a Gilgamesh in the jungle, and they have a Hell in mid lane who's building defense. Maybe crit would not be a very wise option because they have very, very tanky targets. So you want to go something like, Silver Branch, maybe into Titan's Bane earlier just for like the pen, and then into Chin Size, or maybe into like Chin Size earlier because they're stacking HP, and then into Titan's Bane, and then into Silver Branch. It just depends on the game. But if you do want to go kind of like a trans or ability based build on Scotty, it is still okay. I recommend going Hunter's Cowl. Because Hunter's Cowl is still really good with ability base because it gives you a lot of attack speed and it gives you life steal that you need. And then I'd recommend, of course, going Trans, Jones Wrath. It's a pretty solid core. Then I like Crush on Scotty, but of course go Beat Stick if they have healing. Very solid as well. And then of course you want to go Titan's Bane. Make sure you get it after your flat pen items. You can't even go it before Crusher 2. You can actually just go, since Crusher is more of an early game item, you can go Titan's Bane here, and maybe go Beat Stick here, or you can go like even Dominance too. It's up to you, but I would probably recommend going Crusher and then Titan's Bane, and then last item probably Heartseeker. Dominance has some use, though I wouldn't recommend it too much because passive doesn't work on Scotty's dog, which is a lot of her damage. You can go Aussie if you want, some flat pen. It will help synergize with the build a little bit, give you a little bit of life steal, a little bit of attack speed, very solid. But overall, I'd probably say going Heartseeker is probably the best shot, just for that burst damage. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments. To go over it again really quick, this build, I want to start with Cowl, tier 1 short bow, health pots, and make sure you always get Ikuba oboe and cowl. That's pretty much the core. And after this, you can kind of build into whatever you want. Some cases you can maybe go Aussie instead of oboe, but I wouldn't recommend it. There's not much use to it. Oboe is just really strong. No, that's pretty much the video, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments. I'll happily answer anything. And to reiterate, this build can be, both these builds can be used on any of these hunters, literally any of them. Especially good on Artemis, with the tactical builds, especially good on Artemis. You know, gods like Rama, Artemis, Hachiman, Chernobog, all kind of in the meta right now. Izanami as well. Izanami is very strong with both these builds because she works so well with crit, she works so well with attack speed because of her 1. She even has her own percent pen. So, you know, these gods are mainly in the meta. Heimdallr is really good as well with all these builds because he has a solid kit in general. So yeah, those are pretty much the meta hunters that you want to be building these builds on. And you know, like I said, with other gods like Ullr and Scotty and maybe Medusa or maybe Anhur, you know, the other builds still get outshined. Like these builds still get outshined by this build because it is so good right now. And that's particularly that's one kind of small reason why Ullr and other ability-based hunters like Scotty aren't picked too much right now, is because their best builds are, you know, with that virtual with the kit is generally going to be ability-based. That's just kind of who they are. And maybe next patch that'll change, and if it does, I'll make an updated video. But for now, this is the build you want to be using. So, if you guys enjoyed that video or learned something new, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you aren't already, and have a good day, guys. Thank you.